All right. Let's talk about stretch goals. This is things are working great. They get some bounces, things click fast, things click fairly quickly. This new defense is really aggressive, gets some turnovers, causes problems for other teams because they just don't have a lot of good tape on it. So like especially you can catch some of these early opponents off guard because they just don't know what things are looking like. Jalen Rayner is having the best season of his career, that kind of stuff. This kind of stuff is happening. Like you're able to win a few games on the road, all that. Stretch goal number 1 is 10-2 with a Big 12 championship game appearance. Again, this is top end, like things are going really well. I want to preface this by saying just based on the roster and just kind of what I think is possible here, I don't think there is a game on the schedule that Iowa State can't win. Maybe at BYU is the closest thing to it. But if you're playing ball control, if you're playing ball control offense, you have good defense, you're playing ball control offense. We know a team like that in the state that has won a lot of football games playing that brand of football. You limit your own turnovers, you turn the other team over, you don't commit penalties, you don't commit your own mistakes. You wait for them to mess up, and then you be efficient on offense. Now, minus the efficiency on offense, Iowa and Kirk Ferentz have won a lot of football games doing that. And you can win on the road doing that. If you can take a good defense on the road and you can turn them over a couple times, you can win road games. And Bear Bachmeier was really good last year, but there's a lot of tape on him now. Nobody had tape on Bear Bachmeier last year. People have tape on him now. There's a reason there's a thing called a sophomore slump. You're catching him in early October, so you've had some time to gel a little bit, but you're not so far into this that there's mountains of tape on you. You just kind of go down the schedule, take care of the G5s. You can go to Iowa and beat them. I'm gonna count this one as I'd say they don't go to Iowa and beat them, but I think it's close. Again, they can beat Iowa. They absolutely can beat Iowa. But just in this scenario, I will say that's one of their 2 losses. You beat Bowling Green, you protect home, you protect Jack Trice, you beat Utah at home. That's your first leg. Okay, Utah's a good football team. We beat them at home. This thing's rocking. West Virginia comes to town, maybe gets you a tough game, but you can take care of that. You're playing good at Jack Trice. You go to BYU and you beat fucking BYU on the road. They've got a new DC. Bear Bachmeier's got tape on him. I think he will slump down a little bit this year. I think they've ridden high the last couple of years, but somewhat in a somewhat fluky manner, I believe. You go to Provo, you play efficient, you play solid defense, you turn them over a couple of times, you go upset, and you beat BYU on the road. You go down to Arizona. Again, they lost a bunch. That defense the defense has to replace a lot of people. Noah Fafita is a fine quarterback. He's not great. You blasted him last year. Not that makes a lot of difference because it's a whole new team. But theoretically, the returning Arizona players will remember that. But you go down to Tucson and beat an Arizona team that's just kind of fine. Come back home. Oklahoma State's better. They've got a good quarterback. Their offense is moving the ball, but the defense can't stop anything. You have probably your best offensive game of the year so far here. Jalen Rayner they've really got the offense is starting to hum a little bit. Jalen Rayner is putting together a really nice campaign here. Baylor is, I really do think Baylor, this could be Dave Aranda's last season. I don't see a lot of reason for like a massive amount of hope down in Waco. You go down there, take care of business, come back at home, get your revenge against Cincinnati, home game. UCF, I don't think will be great. They're fine. You're on the road. The Bounce House is maybe the most overrated home field advantage, and it's maybe the most overrated home field in college football. And you come back home and you protect home against Kansas State in the last consecutive Farmageddon. Interesting here, Redbird, is Oklahoma State is probably a dark horse pick to make it to Dallas. I don't hate it. Like if you're willing to take like a long shot odd for someone to make it there because they've got a new offense, they've got a new coach, Oklahoma State might be your pick. I think Oklahoma State would be my pick over West Virginia as far as kind of like a bottom to a bottom feeder to front runner type story, I would take Oklahoma State over West Virginia. I think because I really like Drew Mestemaker. North Texas was a really good offensive team last year. Not a good defensive team last year at all. And Oklahoma State was obviously not good last year defensively. I could absolutely see this being like an early 2010s version of Oklahoma State where they're putting points up. They're it's kind of the old school Big 12. They're putting lots of points up. They're winning games 52-45 type of thing rather than, down, in the 20s like they were, towards the end of like the Jim Knowles era or something like that. I think you could see a return to old Big 12 Oklahoma State football. So yeah, they're a fun little dark horse pick to make the Big 12 title game. Stretch goal number 2, Jalen Rayner, newcomer of the year. I don't even know if it's necessary. I wouldn't say this is a particularly stretchy goal. I wouldn't call it a stretch goal because there's lots of transfers in the league and there's some really good players that have transferred into the league. But if Jalen Rayner is good enough to win Big 12, if Jalen Rayner is good enough to win Big 12 newcomer of the year, then this 10-2 thing's all the way on the table. Because, like I said, his mobility causes so many problems for a defense. And if he can cut the turnovers down, the running game gets going because the offensive line is gelling. This whole thing gets good pretty quickly because I really do think the defense. I think the floor for the defense is fairly high. Again, this is all projection. They could be total shit in the fall. I don't know. We'll find out. But just based on personnel, based on the pedigree of this staff, I have reason to believe that this defense is there's almost no way they aren't at least pretty solid. But if this offense is really cooking by the time you get to October and Jalen Rayner's having a great season, he's newcomer of the year. This whole thing is on the table. This whole scenario is on the table. And then number 3, Jimmy Rogers, the Big 12 Coach of the Year. I think if Iowa State is 8-4 or better, Jimmy Rogers is maybe the front runner for the award. It'll depend on it will depend on the types of turnarounds we see from Oklahoma State, West Virginia, maybe UCF. If Oklahoma State next year goes 9-3, then he's probably Coach of the Year. If West Virginia goes 9-3, Rich Rod's probably Coach of the Year. If Iowa State's 8-4, 9-3, somewhere in there, if they're 10-2, he's absolutely Conference Coach of the Year. If we're 10-2 and they're in the conference championship game, Jimmy Rogers is unanimous Big 12 Coach of the Year and probably a front runner for National Coach of the Year at that point. He just got I'm going to call this one a stretch goal because there's just I really think Oklahoma State has a chance to make a big turnaround, whether they 2-10 last year, go from a 10-2 to an 8-4. That could be enough of a turnaround to just get you the Big 12 Coach of the Year. So Redbird's right on it here. The defense is I really do think the defense is I would be really surprised if the defense isn't good. I don't know how good. I think the personnel and the scheme is there to be top 30, top 25. In terms of efficiency, they're good. I think the personnel and scheme and the coaching is good enough to make that happen. Floor is probably top 50. I just don't see something would have to go wrong for this defense to not be pretty solid. So we'll see. Like you said, the offense is a big question mark. I like the ceiling of Jalen Rayner. I love his mobility. I think the arm talent is there if they can just coach the turnovers out of him. But then you've got, I think the receivers are really interesting. I think Omari Hayes has a chance to be a really big time receiver. I think he has a chance to be better than anybody they had in a uniform last year. And then the offensive line, I think they brought in some good names. Masai King, I think is a great guy to bring in. And you've got a few returners as well, but the offense, The offensive ceiling is really going to be heavily dependent on what the offensive line looks like and how quickly they can gel. And if it takes them a while, and if it takes them a while and Jalen Raynor has to just kind of scramble for his life for the first half of the season, it's going to be tough just to win. It's going to be tough to beat difficult opponents. But if the offensive line can at least move people in the running game and get some room for, like I said, it's Aiden Flora or whatever River Peppers gets healthy, or it's Cameron Petaway, whatever that looks like. If you can get at least some push in the running game and get that going, the rest of this opens up. So, I think the defense is like anywhere between top 50 to top 20, for a ceiling type of thing. The offense could be 80th. They could be 30th. It could be on maybe at the beginning of the season, they're 80th and then they finish 30th. I absolutely could see something like that happen. But it's just the offense there's such a wide range of possible outcomes with that offense, just because there's so many unknowns. And but there's a world where that stuff happens. If the defense stays healthy in general and the offensive line gels and starts moving people in the running game by September, by the middle of September, I think there's a shot at this thing. Maybe it's not 10-2, maybe it's 8-4, maybe it's 9-3. You can go steal one on the road. If they go to Kinnick and beat Iowa, I'm going to start talking some nonsense pretty fast. Now, granted, it's early season, and that Iowa won't have basically any tape on us, while we've got mountains of tape on Iowa. Their quarterback situation is, I would not call it desirable. They're losing a lot, on both sides of the ball, frankly. They lost Caden Weegan, who was the best returner in college football the last 2 seasons. But yeah, I think in fact change right here. If you go 8-4, you're ecstatic. 8-4, I think, is absolutely like, hell yeah, we're back. Like, we never left. Let's keep this thing moving. You have some seniors this year that are going to be heavy contributors that you're going to be losing, but you get an off season to replace them. You get some off season development, off season of recruiting, maybe some different transfers next year. 8-4, and we are fully on the Jimmy. We're fully on the Jimmy Rogers. We're on the train. We're all the way on the hype train. I'm already on the Jimmy Rogers train because I really like everything I've heard so far. And I like the idea of a lot of this, but here we go. I was wondering how long it was going to take to get this question. Are you worried about Jimmy Rogers leaving in 2 years if he does too well? No. And I will tell you why. Because if you look at his moves, he was at South Dakota State for a while. And Fireside says 8-4 is our bare minimum. That is getting out over your skis. That's too much. You look at South Dakota State. He was there for a while. Won a national title, all that. Had the opportunity to jump. I mean, you're talking about literally jumping from the FCS to the FBS. That is an actual, that's a tangible, objective step up. It just is. Would you blame anybody for stepping up from Division II to Division I to the FCS? No, of course not. It's a whole different level of football. Literally playing for a different trophy. Now, if we're to believe Jamie Pollard, then then there's also the whole thing of he met Jimmy and then Jimmy asked how do I get this job whenever if or whenever it comes open, and so you could, if that is to be believed, then maybe this was he was going to Washington State sort of theoretically he kind of did the TJ Otzelberger thing where he went out and was a coach someplace else so he could come here type of thing. How much truth there is to Jimmy Rogers was basically hunting for this job, I don't know. But you go from Washington, you go to Washington State, and I'm sorry to Washington State fans that are bitter about him leaving. I understand your pain, or I don't understand it, but like we haven't experienced it. But like I get why you're upset. I get why you don't like. I get why you hate Jimmy Rogers. I do. He left after one season, but and I'm sorry to tell you this, but Washington State is no longer a power. It's no longer a power conference job. It is objectively on the same level as Wyoming and Colorado State and Oregon State dropped down with you, but and San Diego State, Fresno State. You are all on the same level as them now. I'm so like I know it sucks because college football, the sport, fuck you. But Washington State is objectively a step down from Iowa State in terms of prestige, in terms of funding going forward, in terms of conference affiliations, in terms of opponents, in terms of exposure. I'm sorry, but Iowa State is just a significant step up from Washington State. It just is. They're still playing for the same trophy, but Iowa State has a path to the playoff that doesn't involve going undefeated. Like, I mean, Washington State is now condemned to the, it's I guess they're going to call it the Pac-12, but essentially it's the Mountain West, and it's a conference that nobody takes seriously. Washington State's NIL budget is about 10% of Iowa State's. Iowa State doesn't have like a massive NIL budget, but I think if I remember seeing like, ours is like 15 million, and Washington State's was like 3.5. Like it was nothing. They like the budgets for a roster are just not even in the same universe. And I'm sorry, but like I would say it's just objectively a step up. So, but the difference between the gap between Iowa State and Washington State is bigger than the gap between Iowa State and Ole Miss, or Iowa State and South Carolina, or something like that. Like the gap is just not as big between Iowa State and the top end schools as it is between Iowa State and the Mountain West. And I know there's a lot of people in the SEC and a lot of people in the Big Ten that would argue otherwise because they are condescending and they just have no fundamental grasp of anything in college football outside of their own universe. But I'm sorry, like I do feel like, in fact, I feel bad because they got screwed because they were one of the more consistent programs in the Pac-12. And there is an alternate universe where the Pac-12 took those, and we're sitting in the MAC with Kansas State. Absolutely, that parallel unit, that universe is not far away from us, probably, but that is not where we're at. And I'm sorry, but it's a significant step down from Iowa State at this point, and it's not your fault. That's just where it's at. So when you have the opportunity to jump up from Washington State up to a Big 12 school, up to a Power 5 conference, or up to a Power 4 school, and especially one that has like a recent track record of winning, and it has about 5 to 10 times more resources than you do, you take it. And the timing was weird because I don't think anybody besides Matt Campbell was expecting Matt Campbell to leave. Had Matt Campbell not left, I'm pretty sure Jimmy Rogers would still be at Washington State. But Jimmy was presented with an opportunity to move back closer to kind of his home, not Arizona where he grew up, but kind of like, the upper Midwest where he's got a lot of his roots, where he, it's where he played college football, and it's where he, got his, cut his teeth as a head coach at the FCS level. This is the upper Midwest is home for him. And he had a chance to move back to the upper Midwest where he's more comfortable. He had a chance to get a whole bunch more resources at the job. Like I said, if Jamie Pollard's story is correct and 100% factual, then it's a job that he wanted. And it just happened to open up a year after he took the Washington State job. I am a firm believer that he is not he's not a ladder hopper like Lane Kiffin is. Like where Lane, as soon as Lane sees a marginally better job, he jumps. Um, I don't see Jimmy Rogers as that kind of guy at all. He's a football guy in the end, and you can tell when he talks that he's here to play football. He's here to coach football and do nothing else. So I really don't think he gives a shit about the money part of it. I think he's in it to win football games. And I think he wanted to be back in this part of the country where he's more comfortable. And I think he wanted to take over a program that had a lot more to offer him than Washington State. I think that's all there is to it. If he wins in a bunch of years, yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe let's say they go 8-4, 9-3 next year, and then Luke Fickell gets fired and Wisconsin's looking for a coach. Is the situation at Wisconsin dramatically better right now than Iowa State? It's better, I would say. It's like I would say argue it's a better job in terms of like potential resources and winning tradition and all that. But like as far as like state of the program, if Iowa State's 8-4, 9-3 at the end of this year, and Luke Fickell's getting fired, your state of the program is better at Iowa State at that point, and he's got a chance to build on that. So like I don't think that would scare me. I think like, I'm not saying he's going to stick around for a decade like Campbell did. Right. It's a little bit more money, a little bit more resources, but it's basically it's probably a worse chance to make the playoff at Wisconsin than it is at Iowa State. So I don't see it. I know Wisconsin fans will tell you that. Iowa fans will tell you that. Kansas State fans will probably tell you that he's a job hopper and he's going to be gone in a couple years if he wins. I don't see it. Bigger concern is that we may have to replace both coordinators in the first few years if things go well. If we have success, they will both be head coaches. I do believe Jesse Bobbitt wants to be a head coach, and I think he wants to be on fairly soon. What's worth noting, though, is they do have a position coach on the roster, Ross Watson, that was a DC at Toledo. So when Jesse Bobbitt leaves to get a head coach job, Ross Watson's right there. He's basically, he can slide right in. Like there's already DC experience there. Offensively, I don't believe from what I've heard with Tyler Roll, I don't know if he's got the same type of drive to be a head coach as like a Jesse Bobbitt would. Like I think in the end, like a lot of people want to be a head coach, but if you listen to like what Tyler Roll, if you listen to his closing press conference with the Indianapolis Colts, he said like, man, I just want to call plays. And like, yeah, can you do that as a head coach? Yeah, you can be a head coach that calls plays, but I think, like, let's say Jimmy Rogers gets a job in 4 or 5 years and Tyler Roll's still here. Tyler Roll can be your head coach. That's kind of where I'm at with it is I'm about to say a dirty word. Not dirty word. He's great. He can be what Taylor Mauser previously was, where we like thought that Taylor Mauser could be the guy in waiting. But he's just, Jane Pollard decided he was too young. Tyler Roll is older than Taylor Mauser. He'll have, he's been in the NFL. He would be a more qualified first-time head coach candidate for Iowa State than what Taylor Mauser was. So, like, I think if there's enough success that Tyler Roll could leave, then probably Jimmy Rogers could leave, and then at which point you would just promote Tyler Roll or Ross Watson. So I'm not as worried about the coordinators thing because I just think they've got guys on the staff that will slide into that fairly well, or I think they'll stick around for a while. And Heckendorf is on the staff as well. That's been an OC, and there's also other coaches, and we also don't know that these coordinators are awesome. Roll's a really smart guy. I think he sounds like a guy that like can be a coach, but I get the impression he's kind of happy being an offensive coordinator, and he came back to Ames. He likes being here. There's something to be said for that too, and we'll see. It's a lot of speculation right now, but I really do think that they'll be able to. I do think that this staff is. I don't know if they're here for a decade, but I would be pretty blown away if they left in less than like 2 years. I'd be pretty surprised. So I think we'll probably wrap her up for this week, though. Really appreciate all the conversation. Really appreciate all the comments. And we will be back again next week. I would say hopefully there isn't football news next week. We'll see. We'll be back again next week. Talk some Iowa State football, maybe some basketball. And yeah, so everybody have a good rest of your week. Good weekend. Enjoy the men's basketball game on Saturday against Baylor. And we'll see you guys again next Tuesday. Thanks.